Hey Sam, glad you can make it. And I want to be very conscious of people's time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And can everyone see the slide deck? Okay, great. All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for being here. I am Dr. Melinda Stewart. I am the founder and CEO of Compassionate Navigation. And I want to play a quick little game with you first, and I'm going to ask everyone to turn off their cameras for just a moment. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think to yourself, in the last 6 months, have you had to engage in what you classified a difficult conversation? And if the answer is yes, turn your cameras back on. Yep, I am not surprised by this in any way, shape, or form. That's actually the reason why I started Compassionate Navigation. As a communication professor of the last 20 years in academia, I started noticing that people more and more and more were really struggling with having difficult conversations and seeing the impact on their bodies and on their well-being and on their health. My passion areas are in interpersonal neurobiology and cognitive science and health communication. And I really do believe that communication is preventative medicine. The way that we talk to each other has an impact on our access to care. It has an impact on the care that we're getting, but also the communication that we have within ourselves. Oof, that also has a big impact on us. So thinking about the conversations that we're having and knowing that that is having an impact on burnout and our overall well-being, I really started thinking about how can I do more? I can teach my students and I can hope that they will go out into the world and make the world a better place. But I also realized that there was more that I could do first hand and on the front line. So that's where compassionate navigation started. And I'm very excited to say that it's not just me who is making all of these great things happen, but I have a team of 5 people, including one of them who's able to meet with us today. I'm really glad that Sam is on the team. They each take a little bit of a different lens, looking at women's health issues, working with LGBTQIA and trans folks, working with intercultural differences within companies, doing crisis communication. And I focus on a little bit of all of that, but primarily I work as a conflict mediator. I work with individuals, families, universities, hospitals, and help de-escalate conflict, help us navigate conflict. And for you all, I wanted to be able to give you a little bit of information about how we can de-escalate conflict and prevent burnout. But also, let's be real, think about how we can de-escalate conflict when we're already burnt out. Because so much of what we talk about in this area is assuming that we're perfectly calm and everything's wonderful. But the reality is we're probably already feeling a little bit of burnout. So I want to start there and think about how these things go hand in hand. So when we think about conflict, a lot of times we are thinking about people with bad attitudes. We think about poor communication, and that leads to a lot of heightened emotions. A lot of the topics that we are dealing with can lead to heightened emotions because they're high stakes. In HR, people come to us first and foremost when they're getting that new job and they're excited and things are wonderful. After that, typically, and you all know this better than I do because I'm not an HR professional, but it seems like the only time after the hiring phase that you are talking to someone in HR is because you are in trouble or someone is causing trouble and you're trying to figure out how to fix it. So we're not hanging out with our HR folks and our support staff because things are wonderful and we want to share all of that. If that was the case, I wouldn't have a job. It's because it's heightened emotions. We've got our jobs at stake. We've got, sometimes life and death when we're working in hospitals. We have just so many things that are heightening the intensity of this. We have difficult people, but that can be on many different sides of the table. And because of this, and because this isn't something that just happens once or every once in a while, this creates chronic stress. If we're having to deal with poor attitudes, poor communication, heightened emotions, people coming to us when they're angry every day, that's a lot to carry. Oop, keep hitting the wrong button. Here we go. So we want to help you move from, whoa, my apologies. That jumped way too far. We're just going to go right back here. All right. So we have this burnout cycle. And this cycle starts with this chronic stress, this exhaustion. It's wearing us down. And as it's wearing us down, we're going to start having decreased productivity. We're not going to want to do the same things that we were doing before. That's going to lead to increased turnover, whether it's someone higher up saying, hey, you're not doing the same amount of productivity that we were expecting. You don't seem to be engaged, and they're pushing you out the door. Or people themselves are saying, hey, this isn't what I want to do. I want to do something that is more fulfilling to me, and they're going to leave. And if you are like many of the universities and hospitals and organizations that I've worked with currently, they're not replacing those people. Instead, they're like, oh, well, that person's work can be divvied up into these three people. Those three people are not getting compensated for doing the extra work. And so now there's extra workload on us, on those that are taking it. And then we're just adding pressure. We're having overload. We're having to do things that we maybe weren't hired to do, we weren't trained to do. And again, as I mentioned, we're not getting compensated for it. So what are we going to do? We're going to have increased stress and exhaustion, and the cycle is just going to continue over and over and over again. But what does this feel like? All right. And if we're having to have these difficult conversations, we feel this in our bodies. And that's the number one reason that people don't like having difficult conversations is because they physically feel like they can't have it or they shouldn't have it or they just don't like what that feeling is. And so they avoid it, right? That's the easy way out. We just like, well, I'll just have that conversation when I absolutely have to. And that's because there's a lot of uncertainty. And most people don't have high thresholds for uncertainty. So they would rather just kind of passively wait to see what happens. Now, let me ask you this. Let's say you had a bowl of oatmeal and you didn't take care of it. What happens? Well, it's going to get crusty. It's probably going to turn into a science experiment. It's going to be a much bigger mess than if we had dealt with it in the very beginning. Now think about the last difficult conversation you had. When there was a conflict and you avoided the conflict, did it magically clean itself up and just magically go away and we never had to worry about it again? Probably not. More than likely, it came back and it caused more exhaustion, more conflict, more emotional discomfort because when we put things off, it just comes right back. And a lot of times it comes back even worse. So I say all of this to remind us that when we avoid difficult conversations, we trade off the short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction. When we are working in organizations that are not paying attention to the conflict, are just blind to it, or we just avoid those conversations hoping that it goes back to normal on its own, we're creating really dangerous and toxic cultures for dysfunction. So we don't want to do that, obviously. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can avoid some of those things. First, we want to recognize some of the early signs of burnout that are leading to conflict escalation. Then I want to help you apply some energy efficient de-escalation strategies to help us out, especially when we are currently under stress. I want to provide you some strategic language That's one of the things that I do in all of my trainings is not just say, oh, these are the things we need to do, but I want to give you exact language to help you start that conversation. What are some things that we can actually say that are going to be helpful? And then we're going to identify some systematic areas that we might need to be thinking about in terms of making this better and preventing reoccurring stress within our environments. So let's start with what's causing all of this. Well, these are six of the most common areas, according to research, that areas that we're seeing burnout really starting to take place. And they kind of, I like them as categories, little folders of different things, because we could look into any of these and unpack even more specific things that are happening. But these are the kind of the six main categories of what we're seeing where conflict and burnout are kind of working hand in hand. And I would be willing to bet that each of you looking at this can quickly identify, oh, that was that problem. Oh, yep, that fell into that category. So these are things that we see all the time. And again, all of them are going to be things that if we recognize early, we can do something about. And if we ignore it, it's going to come back and haunt us. But here's the question. And we talked about this earlier about we feel the pressure. We feel that these difficult conversations, we feel them in our body, which is why we want to avoid them. And so the question is, why do these conversations feel so impossible? And some of the main reasons I have listed here is that it's not just about one disagreement. There's been a pattern, right? If we have one bad experience with a conversation in an individual, okay, we might not worry about it too much. But if we've had multiple, or we have seen multiple conversations not go well, then we're going to start feeling that our body remembers how we felt in that conversation. And after a few times, your body is going to send out this warning. Now, I mentioned that I'm a big neuroscience person, and it's really interesting how our brains send off warning signals, and that's where our guts are getting that sick feeling, the butterfly feeling. It's because our brain is sending out cortisol, which is a toxic hormone that once it builds up enough in your body, it starts doing some major damage. But it's a warning system to tell us, hey, wait a minute, this isn't safe. So we can do some things to remind ourselves that we are safe and get our nervous system back on track. But when these emotions are running high, we're going to start feeling that unsafeness. And that's really going to happen when emotions are really high, but clarity is really low. Like we're not sure why people are screaming and yelling and freaking out because they're constantly thinking about just their emotions, but they're not giving us any information. And we're problem solvers, right? And in the work that we're doing, we're here to hear what this all is, but what can I do? How can I help? So I'm needing a little bit more of that information. And that might feel like an impossible conversation because they're only stuck in this hyper emotional state. So I'm going to give you some tools to how do we get them out of that hyper emotional state and into giving us some more clarity. I mentioned before that if there's history of hurt or hesitation, that's going to feel really challenging. A lot of the faculty grievances that I have been working with a couple of different universities have centered on this idea of something happened in the past and they keep carrying that along into future things. This is what we did in the past, and I don't like change. And so I'm going to have hesitation to what we can do in the future. So we have to be able to work through that conversation. And again, we can help you with that. We're afraid of making it worse. What if I say the bad thing? I don't want to be the bad guy, gal. I have learned in my time of doing this and being a communication professor, I can't make everybody happy. I am not a taco. So I know that sometimes I am going to be the villain in someone else's story. And honestly, I kind of just made peace with that. I'm gonna have to say no. I'm gonna have to deny requests. I'm gonna have to hold people accountable. And in those immediate moments of having to do that, I'm probably going to be the villain. And I've just made peace with that. If I know that what I'm doing is, in the bigger scheme of things, the right thing to do, it might make you mad, but I'm just gonna hope that eventually you're gonna realize, oh, yeah, no, she was right. That is what we needed to do. Didn't feel great, but in the long run. So part of it is we just have to accept that sometimes the roles that we have, we're going to be the villains. It's just what it is. As long as I'm motivated by the right things, I'm going to sleep great in my little villainy bed. It's going to be fine. And it can also feel impossible when we've tried this before and nothing has worked. Sometimes people just don't change. So, what can we do to change? What can we do to reframe a situation or meet them in a different place? Because the things we've tried before didn't work. Now, what do I do? And sometimes that means calling a consultant and saying, here's what I've tried, and I am at my wit's end, and we can talk through some additional possible options. The biggest thing that we need to be able to do is recognize toxic loops. Before conflict becomes a cycle, we can start noticing that that cycle is starting. And the soon as we can start seeing these things happening, the better we are going to be at avoiding conflict escalation and getting out of hand. So when we start seeing people having the same misunderstandings, they're talking about the same things over and over again, and you have one person talking about it on one channel and another person talking about it on a different one, but they're talking about the same things. We call that bypassing. They're talking about it the same problem, but they're looking at it from two different angles. And it's not that one is better than the other, it's just they're not understanding each other. And until we can get them to be on the same street, we're going to be in trouble. So we can start seeing that and redirect them. We're going to be in a much better place. When you have one person who is constantly avoiding, and because they're not doing anything, because they're not feeding in, the person starts to escalate. They feel if they just get louder, if they get bossier, if they get meaner, if they send more emails, they're escalating. And the other person just isn't ready to have that conversation yet, or they don't know, or maybe they're pausing because they need to talk to someone else. We need to make sure that we're understanding what's happening with that dynamic. When conversations are feeling one-sided or unsafe, we need to make sure that we're intervening and we're helping that. Because too often, a lot of the companies and organizations that I work with, one person has identified that there's some serious issues, and the rest of the people are like, no, it's totally fine. We don't ever have fights. We don't ever have conflicts. And that's probably not because everything's fine. It's almost always because people don't feel safe. They don't feel like they can share that information. And once you have a climate where people don't feel safe, it's basically a department of quicksand, and everyone is just slowly drowning, and it's going to be a lot harder to get people pulled out. So, again, we want to recognize that early and start giving people structure so that they do feel safe. They don't feel like no one's on their side. We now also have issues that turn into emotional explosions. And again, sometimes people are just going to be overly sensitive, as people like to think. But most times that's because there's lots of other things happening. I don't believe that the majority of people that are labeled difficult people are really difficult people. It's difficult situations. Just like when we're working with any individual that is disabled in some way, it's not that they're broken or they're disabled, it's that situations are disabling. So if I'm in a wheelchair and I need to get up a set of stairs, I can't get up that set of stairs. It's the situation, it's the environment that is causing a problem. So we can think about in the workplace too, what situations might be making this a lot bigger of an issue. Or maybe there are things at home, maybe there are things with their family that are exacerbating what you see as this small thing. But what's happening with that individual behind the scenes that is really fueling the explosion that we're seeing? Lastly, as we probably all know, I don't know about you, but if I'm tired and I'm drained and I feel like I'm having the same conversation, I'm probably not my best self. I am going to be a little bit snippy. So if we're feeling drained after each of these interactions, that's going to come through in the way that we're working with those individuals, and it's going to start really creating some burnout for us. So, what does burnout look like? These are some of the cues that burnout is on the horizon. And so, this isn't, if you have one or two of these, okay, it may just be a really challenging time of the year, time of the season that you're in. But when you start having more and more of these, in worst case, you have all of them, you are definitely in burnout mode. It's natural that some of these are going to happen, right? If I'm in a really stressful, working with a really stressful client, I'm probably gonna, you know, have a little bit of difficulty making some decisions. I'm gonna overthink things. But when all of these things start happening, when multiple of these things start happening, it's a real clear sign that I'm experiencing some burnout and I really need to do some things to A, prevent this from continuing, and B, do some work to recover and move forward from that. So, what's actually happening? I like talking about this, man, because I just love cognitive science, but I also think it kind of helps us understand what's happening in our communication responses if we can understand what's happening in our body. So, that bottom level, when we are engaging with people socially and we're in kind of that green zone, we feel safe. Well, when I feel safe, I can be present in the moment. I can focus on my connections. I'm going to feel safe. I'm going to feel grounded. And I can come from a place of curiosity and compassion. Things are good. As my stress rises up, my body will naturally go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And here's something really important to keep in mind with this. You have no control over what your body tells you to do. And in certain situations, you might go into fight. In other situations, just because of the combination of buttons that were pushed, you'll go into freeze. And you get zero control over what happens. It's just the combination of chemicals and hormones that your body produces. And I mention this because I know that for me, that was really an awakening moment to realize that I don't need to judge myself for not fighting in that moment. I had no control over it. And when I work with domestic violence or sexual assault survivors, this is something really important because they're like, but I was laughing the whole time. Right, because your body produced chemicals that caused you to have that response. You have zero control over it. But what we can do is we can recognize what is happening in those moments, recognize those early signs, and then work to counteract it. So if I feel myself getting angry and the rage monster is about to attack, I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to remind myself, why am I getting so angry? Maybe I need to go take a walk. Because if I'm creating an unsafe situation by attacking people, I need to remove myself from the situation for a little bit so I can calm down and come back. So if we can recognize these signs of what's happening, we can regulate our nervous systems, take some deep breaths, take a walk, do some journaling. There's a whole variety of things that I can teach you to help regulate your nervous system and get your mind back on track. Because as these arousals increase, the other fun thing that our body does is the amygdala pumps us full of different chemicals. but our prefrontal cortex goes offline. The portion of our brain that is in charge of logical thought disappears. It just goes sits in a corner and colors. And we can't do anything until we can get that prefrontal cortex back online. So that's why you'll always hear people like, oh, when we need to take a breath and we need to calm down. Depending on how they say it, can sound condescending, but truly breathing, getting your central nervous system back on track is going to be really, really, really helpful to being able to process and move forward. I love this stuff. I could talk about that stuff all day long. So, most de-escalation trainings are going to assume that you are in this calm, regulated state and everything's perfectly fine and wonderful, and you're able to stay in that no matter what. That's cute. That's not normally what happens. Even as professionals, we have moments where we are escalated, where we are in the central nervous system. So, what do we do as the people who are in charge of de-escalating these situations? What do we do? What can we do to help prevent the burnout and also control the situation to help it from escalating further? So I want to give you 6 energy saving tools. And here's the first 3. Number 1, we need to pause and reflect. I love box breathing. And if you're not familiar with this, it's 4 counts of a breath in through the nose, hold for 4 counts, and then 6 counts out your mouth, and then hold for another 4 counts. And if you do this a few times, most of the science says 3 to 5 times will help reset your brain and reset your central nervous system. If you're near somebody that you really appreciate and can hug, a 30-second hug will also completely reset your brain, which I think is really fun. So oftentimes I will find my partner, I'm like, I just need a hug. Give me hugs. And one good hug, and you can literally feel your body reset. So hugs are very important. But if you don't have someone near you that you want to hug, maybe your colleague isn't a hugger, and that's okay. We can do the breathing. And I look at it, I have a whole deck of cards of different ways that we can reset our bodies in sometimes longer term, sometimes shorter term, but I'm happy to teach people how to do that as well. But when we're pausing, we also want to reflect what is going on. And in the tool, the resource guide that I'm going to include at the end of this presentation, um, it includes some things that you can ask yourself when you're pausing. So, is this the best time and place to continue this conversation? Do I feel prepared to have this conversation? Maybe I need to go back and get a little bit more information. Maybe I need to go for a walk quick or whatever. So I give you some tools and some questions to consider early on to make sure that we're really ready. Because honestly, not every conversation and not every conflict has to be dealt with right this second. That urgency that we feel might not actually be all that accurate. That could just be our own anxiety thinking that we have to deal with it right now. But reality is, most of them can wait a minute. And it's better that we pause and we wait a minute. We want to speak calmly and in low tones. There is such power in pausing and the use of our voice, especially when you have somebody who's coming at you hot. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're pushing your buttons. The best thing that you can do is go into a Zen mode. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take some deep breaths as you continue to yell at me. Okay. And I always respond with, when I'm ready, I'm going to let them verbally vomit all over me. And I'm going to take a second. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to create some space. And I almost always say, thank you for sharing that information. I really appreciate you coming to me and you letting me know that this is the problem. I'm here to help. What are the things that you want me to do? Or what are the things that you're expecting you're coming to me to be able to help you with. But I'm going to keep totally calm. And if they continue yelling at me, they continue pushing my buttons, I'm never going to get it in. I'm not going to scream at them back. I'm not going to yell at them back. The louder they get, the softer I get because I want to stay in control. And if I'm making them shut up and stop yelling at me to hear what I'm saying, I'm displaying that I'm still in control. And I really am staying better in control. When we start screaming and yelling, we're activating those parts of our brain saying, oh my gosh, I have to fight. I have to fight. No, 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 no. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to pause. I'm going to speak when I'm ready. I'm not going to let you force me into things because I'm not going to give you all my energy. And that's the biggest thing here. So often we give so much control and energy and power to these individuals who that's what they're trying to do. They want that control. They want your energy. I call them energy vampires. We have people in our life that just want to suck all of the energy out of us. And too often we're like, here you go. Here's all my energy. And then I'm exhausted. But when I take a step back and go, okay, thank you for sharing that. That sounds like you're really frustrated in this situation. And, in my role, here are the things I can do. And here are the things I can't do. But I'm going to stay totally calm. The next piece of this is to use curiosity. I ask a million questions. I love asking questions. And so people are venting, they're word vomiting all over the place. And I'm going to go, okay, that's a lot. Yep. Thank you for sharing that with me. Um, where do you want to start? What does that look like? What can you tell me more about what that situation was? Um, there's a million different questions that you can ask depending on what it is, but start with asking questions before we go into fix it mode. So we want to get as many questions and also getting questions and giving someone a question to think about helps move their brain from emotion to logic. Because now I'm trying, like, okay, I'm going to give you something to do. You can yell and scream. Okay, that's fine, but that's not very productive. And every once in a while, I will say, continuing to yell and scream at me isn't very helpful. I really want to help you, but I need to know what I'm helping you with. So I can acknowledge the emotion, but I need to move them out of an emotional state and into a different state of like, can I actually help you? Sometimes people just want to be heard and they just want to vent. Cool. Come to me, like I'm here to listen. Until my next meeting, because otherwise they're going to take up all your time. Like I'm here to listen, and I've got some ideas of ways that we can prevent this in the future. So when you're ready to work on this and you're ready to problem solve, why don't we set up another meeting when we can do that? If they're not ready to do that, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions. All right, our next three. We're going to use grounding gestures. And this can be something as simple as like putting your hand on your chest. I do this a lot of times when I have patients that are telling me something really emotional, and I'm like, whew, okay, I feel that in my chest. It's just naturally the thing I do. But if I'm trying to keep myself calm, I'm surprised I don't have it on today, but I have a spinning anxiety ring that I wear. And if I'm going into something where I know it's probably going to be a challenge, I make sure that I wear that ring because I can very calmly and very discreetly spin my ring. I can have my hand in my lap underneath the table and I can spin my ring and no one is, everyone's none the wiser. You can hold on to a pen. You can press your feet into the ground to remind you, I am grounded. I am right here. I am safe. Everything is okay. But you want to do some kind of gesture to remind your body that you are not in physical danger. If you are in physical danger, you need to shut that down and get out. But most conversations that we have, we are not in physical danger. So we need to remind ourselves of that. We need to set boundaries. And sometimes, as this little picture indicates, it can be a temporary boundary. All right, that I can see through this, I can push my way through it. So sometimes we just need temporary boundaries. And that can look like us saying, I only have 5 minutes right now, and I really want to make sure that I'm giving this the time and attention that it deserves. Can we set a time to meet later in the day or the next day? You might have all the time in the world, but the reality is you see that that person needs to calm down. So you can create a temporary boundary that gives them that time without you saying in a passive aggressive way, I think you need to calm down. Why don't you come talk to me when you can, be a nice person? That's just going to aggravate the situation. But I can set a temporary boundary. I'm like, I really want to hear this and I really value your experiences. Can we set a time later in the day, even if it's an hour from them? But that's going to give them some time to maybe walk, calm down, take a breath. If you genuinely don't have the bandwidth to deal with that right then, we don't have the energy, we are feeling burnt out, and people are coming to us to add more onto our plate. Sometimes we need to simply say, you know, I'm going to just pick on Sam because I know you'll still appreciate me afterwards. Sam can come to me and I'm like, Sam, I really thank you for thinking of me on this, but I've got a lot on my plate right now. And this is really important. So if we're gonna need me to do this, either can we renegotiate my priorities and what I'm supposed to be focusing on, or and this is I think one of the best things that you can do is if there's another individual that you know could do it, but that person doesn't ever think of, bring it up to them and say, hey, I think this is right in line with what, Lindsay would be great at doing. And, I would really like, and if Lindsay has questions, I'm happy to be there for her. But she's learning her way, and maybe we could give Lindsay that opportunity to do that thing. But I know that I can't do it. So I'm going to set that boundary. I'm not going to people please. I'm not going to just say yes to doing the thing because I think that that's what they want to hear. I have to recognize what I can and cannot do. So I'm going to set those boundaries and I'm going to be very explicit, but also problem solving and not just say, no, I can't do that. Okay, well, I can't do that right now, but I could do it tomorrow. If this is something you really need me to do, can we take a look at the priorities of the other things and maybe I can have Elizabeth help with this other thing that I'm doing. But we're gonna work through that. Lastly, stop over explaining. No is a complete sentence. I cannot do that right now is a complete sentence. I will not be spoken to that way is a complete sentence. I don't have to explain, it really hurts my feelings and it's traumatizing and it makes me think of blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not going to put up with being spoken to that way. I'm going to give you another chance to say that in a different way. And if they continue to yell, well, I'm going to go over here but I don't need to explain. And so often, our natural instinct is to give a whole lot of extra explanation that we really don't need. And that is from the queen of over communicating. Like, I fully know that there are times where I need to just shut my mouth and leave it as is. So these are tools that even I have to put into practice and go, wait a minute. It's not just do as I say, not as I do. I need to do the things that I say I should do. So those are the 6 energy saving tools. So let's start looking at some scripts. Let's start looking at some of the things we can say. I've given you a handful already. But if we're starting to see those patterns, remember, we're going to look for those toxic loops and we're going to make sure that we are stopping them as soon as we start seeing that pattern. And so how do we do that? Well, one, I want you to take a look at all 3 of these areas and notice the very first word in all of them. It's I, me. And it's really important that we remember that the first 30 seconds of every conversation that we have sets the tone for the rest of that conversation. So if I come into a conversation and I'm like, you never do blah, 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 you are such a problem. Even if I'm not yelling at the person, I'm like, you continue to do this. Let's just take this first one. Um, I can I can say it this way, but I'm gonna say it the improper way first, like the don't do this thing. So, um, you keep talking about the same thing over and over again, and I don't think it's very helpful. Okay. Well, excuse you. As soon as I hear you and some explanation of things that I'm doing, my body naturally starts getting defensive. I'm naturally thinking about the times that I don't do that or where you yourself also do that. So we're going to create a defensive climate by starting a conversation with you. So first thing we do, we don't use you. We start with I. I've noticed that we keep getting stuck in the same loop. Can we take a step back and try and figure out what's going on here? It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. I'm noticing that there's this thing that is happening. We want to say, I'm feeling really frustrated because I don't feel like we're making any movement forward. But I'm putting the onus on me. So that is going to allow that person to enter the conversation thinking like, oh, maybe you're right. But if it's about me and this frustration, this confusion, this whatever it is on me, not you're the problem. It's my thing. So identify what the problem is. The other piece of this and the toolkit that I'm going to give you talks about this as well is before we enter any difficult conversation, we need to make sure that we know our goal. What is our goal for that conversation? What are we hoping that we can get out of it? So I can start with this, and let's say it's somebody that this is the third time we're having the same conversation, and I can say, all right, I see we're getting the same loop. We can ask, let's try and figure out what's underneath it, or we can say, it's really important to me that we're able to move past this concern and move forward. So what do you think you need to move forward? So we're not having this rehashing of the history all of the time. Something hasn't been addressed or fixed to move past that situation. So let's find out what that is. So what is it that you need so that we can move forward? So my goal is to understand what their boundary or not boundary, their barrier is, and that's my goal. So let's move forward. But I want to think about what is my goal with that conversation. Okay. We want to hold accountability without blaming people. Oof. That's a big one for a lot of the work that we do. And sometimes we need to hold our own accountability. Sometimes I will say there are times where I take a little bit more of the blame just to get the conversation started, even if I'm like, I'm really not the problem here. But I know that if I started off with me being the problem, I'm going to get that person on board and I can move forward. Right. So I know I've contributed to how this is, how this miscommunication happened. Maybe my email wasn't very clear, but regardless, I want to do better and I want us to be able to work through this. So sometimes we give that grace by just owning a little bit extra of it, and that helps along the way. But again, it starts with me. I'm not coming at you, I'm blaming me, and then we move forward. When I need to set a boundary and we want to make sure that we're working with repair, we can say things, I really care about our ability to work together. I really care about this relationship. And I want to make sure that we're protecting that to be clear and see what we can do to move forward. So, all of this is about collaboration, about working together, and you starting it off. Anytime I have to have a difficult conversation, especially when I know it's really gonna put us on edge, I own it in the very beginning. Like, hey, again, Sam, I really want to talk to you about something that's been a concern of mine. Uh, this is really hard for me to bring this up because I do care about our relationship and I want to make sure that we continue to have a great, working relationship. We make a great team, but or and I want to find a way forward so that we can deal with this and move forward. So I'm owning it. I'm telling Sam about how much I value the relationship that we have, and I'm setting that goal. But I'm also acknowledging that this makes me feel uncomfy. Like this does not feel good to have this conversation. And that little bit of vulnerability can really help people lower their defensives because they're going to realize, oh wow, this is hard for you too. Okay. I'm not feeling great about knowing that we have to have this conversation, but we can share that connection together, which is really helpful. So, huh, how do we identify the systematic problems? Everything that I've talked about so far is really either intrapersonally, so the conversations we have with ourselves, or interpersonally, the conversations we have with others. But if it was just as easy as fixing the conversations that we have ourselves or with our immediate peers, we wouldn't have half the problems that we have. There are systematic situations that are fueling these problems. So I've identified four for today's talk that I think we really want to make sure that we're taking into consideration. So we have this culture of silence where people are avoiding these conversations. We'll just ignore them and they'll magically go away, but we know that's not going to happen. So the shift that we need is we have to normalize feedback. We have to think of ways that we can have safe, difficult conversations and start that pattern of healthy conversations. We need to be able to take responsibility for repair, even when that is unevenly distributed. We want to do an audit of who holds the emotional responsibility of the organization. Are you the person that is always expected to smooth things over? And if it's always you, that's going to weigh a lot on you. And so it shouldn't always be you that is the person who has to fix the problem. You need to have support too. So we need to think about who you can go to have that support, who you can talk to. That's going to be super important. We need to think about what our systems are in place to help us catch issues early and not wait until it's this big festering cesspool of grossness. Let's find the little messes ahead of time, clean them up, and so then we can move forward and they're not just building upon each other. So think about how we can invest in proactive systems. What are the check-ins that we can do? We shouldn't just be doing yearly evaluations or yearly check-ins with people. At the very minimum, we should be working with people and doing quarterly evaluations. What's working, what's not working, and asking, I have a weekly meeting with my team, and every single week I say, what do you need? What support do you need from me? How can I help you? What are the problems that you are facing? And I do that weekly so that they know that there's always an opportunity for them to come to me and say, hey, here's a concern that I have. And then we can work through that. And they're not having to wait until I ask. They just know that I'm going to ask every single week. And then finally, we want to think about our policies. How are they aligning with our values? Is the structure that we have meeting up with what we say we believe in and we do? We want to move from survival mode to connection culture. We need to rebuild trust, and that's going to start by having small moments of human connection. We want to encourage people to set boundaries and think about how we can repair our connections with our leaders. And we have to remember that we don't have to do it all. We don't have to do it all by ourselves. We can get support. We can, get additional training. All of the things that I've talked about today are just the surface of what we offer and what we can dig in and help with more at Compassionate Navigation to really help you and your organizations improve. From a personal note as well as a workplace, there is the podcast that I started earlier this year called Communication Compass. It's on Spotify and iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts. And I always recommend now, we're about to launch episode 40 next week. But I tell everyone start with episode 5. It's one of my favorite episodes, and I think I finally found my podcasting voice in this episode. But I love it because it talks about self-care and self-talk and the negative things that we say and how that's the quicksand that is far more dangerous than all of the quicksand movies that I remember watching as a child of the 80s. I used to think that quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem. And I'm like, no, it's the things that we say in our heads. So we do have a little bit of time. Good, I did save some for additional questions.
Melinda, you have a question in the chat. It is, can you please repeat what the podcasts are on?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. I think I'm on a few others, but those are the three main ones. The QR code is what you need to get to the toolkit. It's a 13-page PDF, and it has some of the stuff that we talked about in this, but more so, it gives you a conflict risk assessment tool so you can think about what level of risk and is conflict within your systems. I have a conflict triage tool. What can you do when you are assessing the levels of conflict? I have some quick tools that you can use. Again, as I mentioned earlier, some of the when you're reflecting, what kind of questions you want to be asking yourself. But I really tried to pack it full of practical tips and tools and things that you can get. So if you scan that, you will be taken to a landing page, and there's just a little button. You don't have to add any additional information. You just click that, and you'll get the PDF. So you also can check out our website to get additional information. And I will first thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate your attention. And I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that you might have. I don't know if there was any other ones in the chat. No? Okay.
No, just a couple thank yous, but other than that, I don't see any other questions.
In that case, if you want to feel free to unmute and ask any questions or share any thoughts. All right. Well, again, thank you. We do offer a free 30-minute consultation to talk about concerns that you might have or areas that you want to work with. As I've mentioned, we work with individuals, families. I do a lot of patient advocacy, which means I help people get access to care, navigate the healthcare scene, translate things that are happening. I'm also a conflict mediator. So, especially for universities, even hospitals, when there are conflicts, I can come in and be that neutral party that can work through what's happening. So, if you're trying to prevent some litigation and having to go the court route, you can hire us as an actual conflict mediator to run that session and help people move through and come up with the best solutions. So the website has our conflict mediation information and packages, the patient advocacy. We also have an individual that does grief advocacy and helping families and individuals work through the different types of grief that they may be experiencing. So if we can ever be of any help, we're here and hope you'll reach out. So I will let you go. I will stick around if there are any additional questions. Again, thank you so much for your time.
I just want to say good job. I liked it.
How's your day going?
It's going. That's about it. I have to run to one of my,
Okay. I'm going to see you Saturday at Pride Fest, yes?
yeah, I'll be there bright and early, so I will see you. Bye.
All right, we'll see you then. See ya. We have Angela in the waiting room. Uh-oh.
She just came on. I don't know if I should.
Admit her, and I'm happy to let her know that.
I'm
Hi,
malicious.
Angela. Um, I'm not sure if maybe you got the time mixed up, but we actually just finished. Are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Gee.
okay. We did record it, and
Okay.
so we will be sure to email you the recording with the additional toolkit.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I am sorry I missed it, but I will certainly listen to the replay.
Sounds good. Take care.
Have a great day.
You
Thank you.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Darn time zones. All right. I
It's
don't.
with you every time.
I don't know. Oh, I can.
Yeah, I don't know if people